Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Single Men Social Club, episode 4. Today, I had the pleasure of chatting with Christina Leitzel, also known in social media as Christina King, and her apprentice, uh, Julien Stonewood. They're going to discuss with us today about their innovation of Fun Eyes, where they've been in the industry, their incredible work, the impact that they've done, as well as sharing some stories on what drove them to this passion, as well as solutions that Christina came up with, like the 3D printed ergonomic tray. We discuss some barriers and insurance and just have a really great conversation. Can't wait to share this with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us for more episodes. With that, let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Single Men Social Club. My name's Ryan McDougall. I'm your host. We're still without Richard Lubin today. He will be back hopefully in mid to late June. I'm here with Christina Leitzel, Leitzel, and her apprentice. What's your name? Sorry. Julien Stonewood. Hi. How you doing? Just want to start off by saying thank you very much for coming out, talking on the podcast. I think you guys, ladies, sorry, have probably a lot of experience in a very niche industry or type of job where I thought it'd be really cool for my audience to get some stories from this unique job. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it definitely did because I had a pretty big passion for art pretty much my whole life. And then when high school came through, I found myself doing like literally like I would sit there 8 or 10 hours a day drawing portraits and ignoring everyone else. I was a little weird in high school, but I ignored a lot of people because I really enjoyed drawing, and it led me to do drawings for like bands and like Sum 41. I know you're up in Canada. So yeah, so like the like fun pop punk scene or whatever you want to call it. And I've been like passed around along those lines. But after that, I was actually in college for industrial design and technology because I like doing things with my hands. I like building, I like metal, wood shop, you name it, FX. So I think that the two of these worlds for ocularistry of like physically working with your hands, mechanical aspects of it, and the three-dimensional shape combines that industrial design idea along with the coloring and like the fine detail. So and I think Julian's kind of in the same boat. So yeah, because
yeah, I did a lot of painting. I was like the kid who would doodle in the margins, like little eyes and stuff like that. So I did a lot of painting, and then I also did a lot of sculpture. So that's where I got my 3D experience.
So it just magically aligns. There you go.
That's awesome. And it's really cool how the job itself is there's a lot of hands-on work and very technical aspects of like you're putting an object into someone's orifice, right? So it's one of those things, but then it's also you have that aspect which we'll talk about later with the fun eyes and how you can unleash your creativity, and it doesn't really have to be these very like strict margins, right? Where you can work with your clients or patients or whoever you may call them. And it's very interesting that there's those big dynamics, right? There's those huge ranges of like you can tap into a lot of different emotions of giving people closure or giving people that like creative expression. So like that's really cool. What have you, when you were in these hospitals, so you were in a lot of renowned institutions, were there particular experiences that you had that kind of shaped your approach to doing this? Or was there a specific moment of like mentorship or something of that nature where I said, this is for me?
When I really started working, there was a couple hospitals in Philadelphia where I was in ocularistry already, and I happened to have a run-in with a fellow that had come through who had a child with microphthalmia, which is a tiny eye, and they also had vision, which is it doesn't
really
happen.
likely.
Yeah, it's not likely. And if they do have vision, usually it doesn't last too long. But given the aspect that they have vision, I like to keep at least, we want to, with ocular prosthetics, you want to keep, when a child is small, you want to add to that prosthetic to keep the bone structure up at a really young age, because if you're not pushing it up, that lid will come down. It has like physical reason, like there is a reason. It is durable medical equipment. They look pretty, but they actually serve a purpose. And so I was working on one with, this was my particular little one of, I won't disclose names, but yeah, the fellow came in and they didn't disclose that they were an ophthalmologist, just that they were looking for someone to help with their daughter, and had been all over the place. They went to Paris, they've been everywhere, New York, California, and no one really wanted to touch the daughter to work on. Like, they didn't want to make a conformer, is what it basically came down to. And a conformer is a clear shape that there can be like stock conformers, so like just like a very clear, quick shape. Right. But what I did was I ended up fitting that little girl with a custom conformer. So like I would a regular eye with an impression and making sure that it sat perfectly still. It was a lot of work, because I think that was the first time I realized that I should probably take an impression on my own eye so I could tell that child what to expect. So I did that. And that kind of plays a part in it, because when the mom did tell me she was an ophthalmologist, I said, okay, well, at least we can check our corneas after, we can check everything else. And she actually wanted an impression as well. So it wasn't just myself doing it, but that kind of a connection actually opened me up to working with a lot of children for the next 4 years. So with that, I dove into just making sure that those children, because children are not always verbal, so you have to read not only the socket, you have to read the cues of if there's redness around their face, or if they're having agitation or a large tear buildup, like something is not right. Redefining my skill in that way of watching how they react to was really helpful in my overall approach to how I treat everyone. Yeah, that was a very big part of my learning experience.
Right. And with your apprentice, was there like a particular moment working with Christina where you had that same type of moment? Are you still looking for that, or have you?
Today, right? A little bit. At least seeing the one that we just finished, the show. I don't know.
With
We just finished. Yeah. Like, sorry, we're discussing like something that we just finished. Yeah, I know. Ask it one more time.
No, just, has there been any impression or experience that you had with your mentor that allowed you to buy in? Was there one of those things where you're like, yeah, I feel comfortable trying extra hard or committing to doing this type of job, and you realize this is like something that you wanted to do?
I have two moments. One, somebody flew across the world, and I got to paint an eye. He was a teacher, and I got to paint an eye because he was talking about how his kids would be like nervous or scared.
Right.
And so I was painting it, and it was super detailed. It was one of the hardest ones I've done. And I remember, like, I painted it, and I came in on my day off and painted for 7 hours trying to get this right. Like, it was really difficult. Yeah. But it had that moment of, like, super, like, gratification at the end, where, like, I saw him fit, and it felt comfortable, and it looked really good, and I was so happy about that. Right. Yeah. And then the second one was when someone came in, and I put, like, a tooth in their eye, and it was the first one that I had, like, fit by myself, and like I had made the mold, and I had polished it and cleaned it up and done all of the parts of it. And so I was like,
put a what in their eye? A tooth?
Like a little tiny tooth, like an animal tooth.
Oh, that's
crazy.
It was, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was super cool. And then I was like, wow, like my art is in the world. Like people are perceiving that. Right. So that was really cool as well.
Yeah, that's the moment that most people come back to. Like most ocularists, they get, at least for me, I still, 15 years in, get that high. That person loves what they just got. Like that little like light that they get and they look at themselves in the mirror. That is like the best part of our job, I feel. Like you just, yes.
Well, and what you're doing with social media is you're developing like almost like a portfolio, right? Where you look at that and you say you can contrast and say that it's not to compare it completely, but like a tattoo artist, like the amount of work that they put in, and then they develop a catalog, and they have very rewarding pieces or very challenging kind of accommodations or something like that. Like, congratulations to you two for being able to do that, because there's not many people that are able to, especially get close to people's eyes and do that type of stuff. Like, and on top of that, fine motor skills is probably a huge thing too, where it takes a lot of fine tuning with your brush strokes and stuff like that, where I'm sure it's a lot of practice. Definitely respect what you guys do for sure. That must have not been hard now, because you guys are obviously professionals, but it probably was challenging at some point. So Christina, you were the first to create the 3D printed ergonomic impression trays. Can you tell us a little bit about this innovation and how it benefit other ocularists and how that...
Yeah. So there's not many ocularists, so I don't know how many it benefited. It was more like a thing that I wanted to do for myself, because generally most impression trays are all made by hand. Do you want to grab an impression tray? Or one that we're grabbing impression trays, so we can talk about it. One from over there, and one that's just connected, the one that's glued together, and the one that's printed.
This blue one?
Yep. And then just any of the printed ones. Yeah. So typically, usually I would put this job off on an apprentice, because it's great work to do. And you could spend making one of these trays, you could spend like all day making like maybe 2 of them. So the trays themselves, you've got like the cap part that could be a different shape. You would make that all by hand, and then you would basically glue or fuse it together to a stem. And that could really take all day. And on my end, I wanted to create a 3D tray and also get my now husband a chance to get some work into. But I have industrial design as a background, and I love it, but I don't like working on computers as much. So I was, you know what, I'm going to let you design these. I'll create the shapes. You'll modify them. And the best part is, like, when you do it by hand, the 2 pieces, because we generally make a left and a right that try to match, you're never going to get it perfect. So at least with like a 3D print, you can just mirror that and get exactly what you want. And I also thought for the ocularist that having these like ergonomic ones, because sometimes they're made they look like a cone, and it's like a very circular like shape. And these are definitely like different shapes. Like, they are more true to a socket, and I have like various sizes and shapes depending on what you're working on. They're also numbered, so that if you wanted to log in your notes like what number you used for each person, it's very useful. I just wanted this all because it just made it easier for my life, and also the cleanliness of them not being glued together. The fact that they're one piece, they could be cleaned very easily, was, I thought, very beneficial for myself, as well as, let's say if someone had multiple offices, they could have double or triple the amount and just leave one at each office. Sometimes it's a very small field. They will like literally pick up all their tools and go to another office and then be there for whatever, if it's a week or a weekend, and then come back to their main office. It's very useful to have numerous 2020, I stopped a little bit because we had a kid. And so I do need to jump back into printing them, but they've been very useful. So hopefully I'll create more for pediatric sizes as well soon. But
now, how exactly do you get the measurements? So is it something like a scan, or is it, how exactly would you get those, like those angles?
We developed them I picked my favorite like shape. When I noticed that someone had like a shape that was pretty like everyone else's, there's definitely like different shapes, ones that are like very triangular, ones that are really round, ones that are fit over a globe that just need to be thinner and just curve different. I would just save that. I'd carve it down and just literally create it. And then once I liked the shape, when I developed the 3D, I would actually like paint. I literally painted it and scanned it in, and then had my husband like mock it all up in 3D and then print them. So it was a lot of trial and error. I had started that process of creating them I want to say, I had the idea literally since I started in ocularistry, but it wasn't till I want to say 2014 or 2015 when I really jumped in and started making them. So it was like years and years before I actually put them out. But that was a long process, worth it.
Was there much of a budget or like a lump sum of investment that you needed to buy printers or anything like that? Or was that kind of something you already had established and it was
No.
something you could...
The printer itself, I think I think it was like $9,000 or something at the
Right.
time. And we are advancing much with our printing technology. And that printer itself actually worked really well. It was like a resin printer that like cures with UV light. So it dips into it and sets it. That was like I used a printer that had like the finest lines. So we actually, after it was printed, it still wasn't fine enough for me. So I actually end up pumice and polishing them and cleaning them up a bit, but just to make sure that they're smooth. The other objective was finding a company that would have a plastic that's okay to go into someone's socket. So just clearing and making sure that was safe and bodily safe for like mucous membrane was also a hassle. So
Right.
we did find it.
So there's like some type of plastics that can't be used as
Yeah.
And is that for deterioration or something like that, or is it like chemicals?
I think it's just like safety for membrane. That's the same thing with the actual prosthetics themselves. Some people I've seen the comment online, oh, I'm a nail tech. I'll just go I'll use it smells just like that plastic. And what they don't realize is even epoxies, I've seen someone use an epoxy and I'm going, that can be so hazardous to your health.
Right.
And that was actually one of the primal reasons where we'll get into the fun eyes, why I made the fun eyes, so someone didn't take it into their own hands.
To be artsy.
Yeah. But do it safe.
Exactly. And like when I look at my sister, I wanted to ask, like, how often would are they changing it through wear and tear, or are they changing it through like growth of their like facial structure?
It's your face. So females seem to change more often because we go through a lot of hormonal changes. I've seen men also go through hormones. It's whether it's hormones or it's time, because your body does actually change. It's very much like your teeth and how they shift. Your body will shift. Sometimes if someone has an implant, like the ball-like structure, this is literally what they look like.
Okay.
Some of them. There's variation, but this one is like one of the most common ones used. This one will be placed in the socket, so that gives that volume, and we fit over top of that. That one, sometimes they will migrate, meaning like moving, and they'll usually move up and out or down and out. We'll be fitting, adjusting if it does move, if it does migrate, just so there's no rubbing and people are comfortable.
So how often would someone, because once you are, I don't want to say assigned, or once someone approaches you for what you're doing, is there any, like, do people change a lot, or do you stay with them their whole kind of lifetime? And is there some time it cuts off, or is it like you're from the moment there's an incident where they need some kind of eye or prosthetic or something like that, it's probably till they pass on that you're interacting with them. So that's a very close bond. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've had people come to me and say they felt like they've cheated on their ocularist, which, you know what, you shouldn't be embarrassed if you want to try someone new. We still have people in this clinic from Oregon who have been with us since they were literally like 1 year old, and now they're in their 40s. It is a very tight bond, and unlike any other profession, dental, you can go wherever you want. But ocularistry, yeah, generally clients have a very tight bond with their oculars because they've shared so much of their story and their life. And generally when someone rebooks with us, I go, oh yeah, that person. Oh yeah. Oh, it's been a minute. They haven't been here. Or oh yeah, I just saw them. They needed to blah, blah, blah. And with social media, I think everyone's kept in touch closer with me so they can reach me. But yeah, I don't know if you've noticed any, like just from Julian's newer, but I think like it's easy to observe how close, because I think you had questions about that too initially, like why do you I think one of the questions that Julien asked was like, why do you spend so much time with people? And I'm like, there's a long history. And I'm like, just wait till you're further in and then you'll see it all unfold, and it's cool. It's cool.
You definitely built rapport.
And the amount of rapport that you're developing is they're letting you into their soft spot. So it's very interesting, especially you're seeing them at a very vulnerable moment, right? It's one of those things where you, unfortunately, they're at a point, probably like a trivial point or a very like detrimental, but it's you've been placed there for a very good reason, and it's a good like foundation for a very strong bond because you're nurturing that very like healing type of aspect. Very cool. You guys talked about older patients, and we never really discussed younger patients. How is it there a unique challenge when dealing with pediatrics or working with younger patients? Do you get more of a reward? Do you get more of a kind of feeling of relief when you're working with younger patients?
Relief? No.
Julien, no relief.
Right.
I think kids will be kids, right? So there's no easy way to approach it, but generally, yeah, when you're going through it, I've developed ways of trying to not hold kids down, but to try to relax. I try not to lie to them when I go to take their eye out. I will like generally be very gentle and say, okay, I'm just gonna like tickle your face. Is it okay if I touch your eye? Trying to bond with them first, because I think that's crucial.
Psychology with them of like, I'm trying to actually gain physical like contact with you and make sure you're comfortable with me. So yeah, keep going. Sorry.
But also, early in my career, I used to say, if you hold still, here's a lollipop, or we dangle the carrot, so to speak, like early on. And I learned that's probably not the best idea. And I'm probably the worst parent to say this because I will generally cave and give my child everything. But since I'm on that side of things, I just go, oh, I'm gonna tell you when I touch you, I'm gonna whatever. And I'll give it like the 3-strike thing where I'll say, okay, on that 3rd strike, and I'll give the parent, they come in if they're new, say, look, children will smell your fear. And generally when they come to us, retinoblastoma, so they've been through the worst. Their PTSD, white coat syndrome, you'll notice I only wear like black, or when I'm around kids, I'll actually take off the lab coat entirely because I don't want them to feel triggered. I'll dim the lights. Also with adults, I'll try to make it relaxing. If they have a favorite music, I'll put that on. But generally, sometimes in the beginning, especially when we're new, it will come into a screaming kind of a zone at first. And some people have put children under for their fittings. I don't find that helpful because you still have to try in those shapes and make sure they fit. And ultimately, when they get their eye, they're still going to have to try it in. So I compromise with them. And then there's the tough parenting where we do just say, now it's time to hold down a little. And I've come up actually with that ophthalmologist from Philadelphia. She showed me a really gentle way to hold children down, and like for a single parent to do it as well, because generally you don't always have both parents there to help take an eye out or put it in if need be. So yeah, it was cool. So yeah, we just take it slow with children, but yeah, no, there's the gratification.
Well, it's
when
probably it's cool. Challenging. Yeah, and that's very fascinating because I never really thought about that of the adolescent's child, and because even when you think about taking a kid to their first haircut or dentist appointment, it's imagine taking your kid to their first eye fitting, right? Yeah. So it's like one of these things where it's way, way higher. So it's kind of you have to have a level of understanding where it's okay, this isn't normal, and like they have every right to freak out, but we still got to be mature and get this done, right? So it's very interesting because I never really thought about the adolescence. I was like, oh, like being that like healing factor at a very young age, and that's amazing. But then you're like, the kid probably doesn't want it. The kid really just doesn't want to be around. And
I think I've had a kid actually, they were Hispanic, and he knew that I didn't know enough English, but I knew enough Spanish. Right. He was like, I think he was like 7 or 8. This was years ago. Right. And he ended up kicking me in the stomach. And he goes, I was like, if you don't hold still, and I knew he understood me, then I can't get a good fit, and the eye is going to point the wrong way. Right. And he finally sees it, and he goes, muy feo. And I go, but you held still. Yeah. and I did. I had to do a little build up to bring it in a little. But I was like, I know what you said. And I think he flipped me the bird too. Yeah. So it was really cute. He was spicy. But yeah, you get all walks of life through it. And it is rewarding when they do see themselves too and are like, ooh, that's really cool. So yeah, that's cool.
And yeah. I want to tie this kind of into fundraisers and kind of the community supports and stuff like that. But is there any like patients that do you see any economic struggle with like insurance coverage, or is that a very big challenge for your area?
So
And because again, there was probably some reason that you were like, hey, I need to fundraise some money and do this thing. It can't be all just because you want to do it. There has to be some kind of like economic struggle where people can't afford it. Can you briefly talk about that without disclosing anything crazy? But yeah.
That's a good question. I feel like across the world, there's a lot of struggle with prosthetics in general because they're considered DME, so durable medical equipment. But I feel like it should fall under prosthetics, and at least in the States, because I know you guys are in Canada and you guys, like, I've talked with the Canadian ocularists as well. And I think recently a few years back, I provided some of my billings to help raise the prices because they're lacking. And like the amount of raises that you guys get versus us as well are very low. So generally with our insurances, we can have so many variable insurance. I think like right now we try to work with, I think there's almost 30 insurances. Wow. And some people, when they pay into their insurance, they have like deductibles where they have to pay whatever, 5,000-10,000 first. And then we'll have possibly a percent covered. Sometimes 80%, sometimes they're responsible for different rates. But all these little things like with the eye, like when you make it, and then like checkups, or if there's a buildup. I think in the beginning when I had my first practice by myself, I was waiving some of those fees because children especially would come in and need multiple conformers or multiple buildups, and I would just send the parent home with a couple extra that were slightly enlarged because if they came from a distance, it's not so easy to just drive 6 hours or 3 hours and come back and forth. But the insurances are a struggle, and it could be someone just needing a ride. It could be someone needing to help a copay, even a checkup, even like with Medicaid or Medicare. Sometimes like for checkups, we have some people will say, oh, there's a $19 copay, and even they can't pay that. So I'm like, at that point, I just waive it if they're really struggling, because there's got to be humanity in this industry, and you can't be a total pushover, but I also don't feel like it's right to just hold that little bit over someone's head. Like, you have to love your job. And again, you build that bond with the person. And sometimes when someone has like a huge balance or deductible and or forget to pay their balance, they'll just disappear for years. And I'm trying to bridge that gap and figure out what that happy medium is to get them still coming back for their checkups, because sometimes I won't see someone for 10 years because they're scared of the cost. If there's a checkup or build up, it's sad. The health industry is
you almost feel bad because you say my hands are tied.
And also it could happen to me. That's how I look at it.
Right? Like insurance is insurance. And talking about that too is it probably establishes a lot of gratitude for the job. If you knew this guy's spending his last penny to get these prosthetics, and you say, where's this guy going to be moving forward, and how's this going to look? I'm sure it's a lot harder to accept the job that you did, because although you did do a service, it's like you might have like it might have been harder, right? Like you might, like, even though it was a necessity, it might have made this person's life significantly harder, right? Because insurance isn't going to pay it. So I can definitely understand and empathize with you how that is like a huge factor in wanting to try to bridge those gaps of eliminating copays or meeting in the middle with some of those things, because I'm sure that's one of those things where you probably have such a small community that it's probably very hard to talk about the mental health aspect of it, or lingering things that happen where I wish I could have done something, or I wish I wish there was more I could do in the system that I'm in. But unfortunately, this is just how it works, and I have to, at some level as a professional, I have to accept that. But can you, moving into the mental health aspect of it, how do you integrate like dealing even with your, like, even having a mentor and having your apprentice and doing that? How do you integrate that kind of trauma training or PTSD training with people that you're working with to understand the struggles, but also be able to overcome them. Because I think that's very important.
I was going to say, Julien here actually knows a lot about that, which is why I hired them, honestly, because of their history of dealing with that at such a young age. So I don't know if you want to go into that at all or where you want to skim. Yeah.
I work at a crisis hotline as like my other job. So I've been working in mental health for the last 2.5 years. And like you learn so much and you hold so much in your heart. And I like here that you can have like more extended relationships. You don't need to like have a time limit. And so you can create a space. And there's also like training on that in terms of not trying to bright side things and trying to just hold that and be like you. A line that I say sometimes is like, you can share as much or as little as you'd like, but I am here to listen to your story if you want to share that. And a lot of people don't have that space. And so having a space where I think some health professionals don't really give that time and space.
Yeah.
So that is one thing I really appreciated about working with Christina is she just gives like time. She builds in time for people to be able to have that safe space to come to, especially there might not be so many connections to people within the One Eye community.
Yeah.
And so being able to have a space where they're able to talk about it and the space is comfortable and the lights are low and and it doesn't feel like a doctor's office.
And that's
there are plants around.
Yes, along with the black lab coat, I purposely have made the rooms a little bit more colorful, except for the paint room. There's colors, but it's mainly white because I need it to be white. There's certain things that I need to keep, but otherwise we purposely keep things friendly and open and warm and inviting because I've seen a lot of offices that are very like cold and white and a little scary to be in. And I think with something so much as like an eye where it should be more closure, I don't know if they feel that comfortable when they walk in. I just think, again, how would I feel if I had to walk into that space? So again, making little changes like that helps.
And what's really interesting in talking to you too is that as well as your level of empathy, there's also a level of realism, right? Where you're not sugarcoating anything or you're not telling white lies, right? You're in a gentle way, you're giving someone the straightforward, where that's a very respectable thing, right? Because a lot of people are very afraid of that confrontation and they're very afraid of having that kind of moment of friction where afterwards you say, oh, it's good that we got through that and we understand each other more than me lying to you or me trying to lead you down the wrong road, and then you find out later that I rug pulled you. So it's very commendable that you have that realistic approach where especially when you're talking about youth, where you say, as much as I want to be very friendly, at some point I have to get the job done and remain a professional, right? So it still establishes that level of you're being realistic, right? You're being straightforward. And that's really awesome because I think that's a big thing when it comes to mental health is that a lot of people it's a trust thing, right? Where a lot of people, they don't want to establish that bond because they feel like they're going to get betrayed. So the fact that you're honest and straightforward the whole way is a very big foundation to establish those very long-term relationships, because if you did it any other way, it might lead to conflict, second visit, third visit, etc. Go ahead.
I was going to add in that, on my social media, it's been amazing that so many people have let me post so many different situations with the being realistic aspect, because that was something I noticed. I sometimes will go to other people's websites and just see what is being portrayed or like what people see. I've always been into showing realistic outcomes. So you will see a variation, and usually in my descriptions, if people actually read them, they will talk about what is happening in the video, why something is looking that way, if there's scar tissue, or if there's an eye that's just very enlarged from glaucoma. I want people to relate to whatever they're seeing and say, oh, this can be done, or this can't be done, or this is my realistic expectation. Like, you can't always make everything look perfect, but this is my variation of that. And people have been super kind in letting me post that. It's really helpful that we have that kind of clientele too.
And that's amazing you just brought that up, because it brings us in, it segues us into the next topics. But that's really awesome, because I want to expand out and see, like, without the occupation that you have, what are your views on social media, and do you think there's a universal benefit, or do you think you found a niche market, or do you think it's all depending on how you feed the information, right? Because you see a lot of garbage on social media, or a lot of negative attitudes, or people posting very positive stuff and getting a lot of shame for it, right? So where do you find that happy medium of this is like a healthy amount, or I'm giving enough of a healthy content, but I'm also getting healthy engagement? And do you ever find like those scales in balance, or do you find like you keeping a good balance with keeping that life cycle of that positive thinking? Because I think it only takes one wrong word or one wrong thing, and then you get shunned.
Yeah.
Right?
So everyone's warning people, oh, social media is bad. There's all these things that could go horribly wrong. Again, which is why I just, again, get my approvals of people letting me post and just being more factual with it. Sometimes I do have fun with my posts, whether it be silly or I just want to connect to and just let people know, hey, I'm a human too. But also when it goes to the post, I will go through comments, because sometimes there are people that are just so out of line with their comments. If it's not something that they wouldn't say to your face, and I know that people will let me tag the individual in the post with it. So sometimes I'll respond with, that person can read what you're saying, right? Like they're not blinded by this comment. And if it's extremely rude because it is a company, I'm sorry, if you have something that rude to say, I have no shame in blocking you and deleting your comment. So if you don't like that, then I will remove you from viewing it altogether. But generally people, what I did find, have been really kind, and they're actually connecting, and that's, I'm sure we're going to get into it a little bit more, but I noticed that there were individuals who were posting about their stories, who were sharing their prosthetic stories and wanted to talk about it. So that's why I started to post more and more. And when I basically became friends with everyone, I do post. There is like generally a few people that I'm closer with. They have shared so much with me that it's actually easier for me to understand from their side. So, and yeah, then we just become friends. So it blurs the lines a little bit, but it's a good thing. And the way that we're using the platform for, I feel like, more positive is letting people feel like they're not alone.
Right.
Or again, teaching the public and letting them know about this different world. When I've had clients who have been out in the public and said, hey, we got called out. And someone goes, did you see the fun eye over there? And the second the client hears fun eye, they like whip their head and they're like, what? Like, you just called me out. And then they're just so excited because it sparks this conversation. So I think that it actually, like, I think it benefits the community, and also the way that social media is spreading in that sense with what we'll get into the fun eyes. I think it's been very positive and actually really helpful for the community overall. So yeah.
Sure.
I don't know if you've got any additional information on that or how you viewed it at all.
Yeah, I think it helps normalize things.
Yeah.
Like it helps bring awareness to it, because for a long time disability has been in the shadows, or quite literally like laws against being out in public.
Yeah.
And so having that be public and having like a safe space for people to interact in, and just so people view it as something that's interesting or gain more understanding on it. I think that's super important for people to have that context and not be afraid.
Yeah, sorry, no, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not be afraid. And also disability is portrayed in like villains in media.
Yeah.
And so having like positive representations of people in media, I think is super important. And also connecting people, as you said.
And we're over the pirate patch, and we're over the quick whatever. We're like, come on, everyone gets, I understand it now, and I actually get very defensive for people when they say, oh, they were really, like, I watched a post someone had put up, and it was, oh, that person on the bar, oh, they have a gnarly eyeball and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, could you guys have depicted someone ugly a different way? I can't be too sensitive either. So I retract that a little bit, but I'm like, okay, they were just doing makeup, whatever. But yeah, to a sense, like, we shouldn't portray people like that, because heck, there are some gorgeous models out there with one eye, and they literally won't even wear a prosthetic. And shoot, they look great. Guys and girls, there's lots of people out there, and they look amazing, and they're owning it, and they're great. So
Totally.
not a disability. It's more like we're killing it. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, they're doing it.
You can tell that there's a lot of appeal to that type of positivity, right? Because of the following and because of the amount of people and the amount of engagement. So it's you've almost proven it already that it's needed just based on the following. And there's a level of people that are actively engaging in your content. So you're definitely you're creating that positive influx in social media. So that's amazing. And it dulls out the negative stuff and the shade. And again, if you just overwhelm it with the positive stuff, then it doesn't really matter. Let's get into the Fun Eye Fund. Let's talk about the Fun Eyes. I think that's something that we've been holding back for a bit. Let's just go ahead, Christina, explain the idea of the Fun Eye, how you came up with it, and talk us through that.
Yeah, so generally they used to be called, I say used to because I won't use it anymore, novelty eyes. For me, a novelty eye sounds like something you're going to like put on a shelf.
Right.
Like you are storing that. You are not keeping that with you. And I was like, no, it should be called a fun eye. You're going out, you're having fun, you're representing, you're choosing to wear it. And I was told earlier on in my career to just don't do that. Don't post it. It looks unprofessional, which yes, and times have definitely changed. And I believe that if I were to have done this back in 2010, it would not have been great on the internet. I think it would have been poked fun of. So I think like we are getting to this point in society and the internet that it's becoming mainstream only because it is relatable and people feel comfortable talking about it. So again, like timing is everything. People are willing to express themselves more. The fun eyes in general. Rachel in 2020, I had fit her, I think it was 2021 early, and she had asked Rachel McKensley. So let me distinctly say that she asked for a fun eye. I have done them in the past. I never really posted about them, but it wasn't till her that I said, okay, maybe I'll post. And also, she really pushed me to post because I was terrified of posting about anything business related. I would share the tops of the paintings of the eyes, and that's about it. But she pushed me, as well as Miss Teacher posted. Like she said, you guys, you need to post these things and you need to like show them off because they're really awesome. So when I did that, I was very nervous to see what the public would say about them. And then when their videos went viral and like people were asking all the questions, I was like, okay, maybe we are onto something. But those girls really pushed me to like really push to make them more public. Again, and it wasn't until like even this last November, I went to my first Ocularist conference in person that I was like, because I've been doing them online for a while, just because I was like, I haven't actually seen anyone in person. I'm nervous of like how the rest of the society thinks about it now, because I know they've seen my content. Right. I know they've heard their patrons come in and go, Christina does this. And I'm like, don't get and I'm like, I hope no one feels like on the Ocularist and, oh, I got to do this now because she's doing this.
Or like she's defacing the profession. Right.
No, these are like, and the fun eyes themselves, I won't make them until someone has a regular eye. So it is generally just a copy of what I've already done. Right. And they're a give back because we do have the Fun Eye Fund, which has a really long list. We're hoping for more like supporters and sponsors to help make more. I've made over 60 fun eyes, and I want to make more, and I want other ocularists to be able to take that money as well to make them for people who don't have the funds to do it. If they do have the funds, and I make them at $500 each, because it's a give back. Like they still take the same amount of time. They still take a lot of detail, and sometimes things don't go right. So you still have to go back and redefine them or readjust them. In the beginning, I was like nervous of a lot of material, so I just wouldn't even charge for them. I would just do them. And then I've had other people just, I don't know. I've just tried to help as many people as possible, because when people take interest, especially children, it's hard to say no to a kid. So generally, a lot of kids got them. Or they say, I had this idea, but I also had this idea. So then I just say, okay, I'm going to stay late and just do both. Like, we'll just do both for them and surprise them when they come in tomorrow. So yeah, that was really exciting. So like that little high that I talked about like when I give the eye to someone, man, when they see those fun eyes, they like lose it. We've even I had oh, what are they, 12 or 10-year-old come in and they did not want to get an eye. Their mom actually showed my account, and I believe that they grabbed the phone and just kept scrolling through the whole thing, and they were like, yes, I want a fun eye. And the mom was like, that's fine, but you actually have to go get fit for a new eye then. And so they were scared even at that age. So but they sat through it, and I don't mind if someone make your eye and where you live, your ocular still needs to see you and do the work and whatever. Bring it over here after, that's fine. But I think helping whoever wants it, and again, if an ocularist doesn't feel comfortable, I have no problem helping out with that. But I want everyone to be able to get access for these. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, haven't heard all.
Yeah.
But
you were talking about timing. There's been this big shift within the disability community because in the past it was very focused on assimilation.
No.
And now, at least especially in like younger population, there's been this big shift on accentuating and celebrating disabilities and like celebrating being unique. And I think having that option gives people autonomy, when in a lot of cases people have not had autonomy within disability. And so giving them a choice is like really empowering.
Yeah.
And so I was super excited about that.
Yeah.
That's where I was like, I want to work there.
Yeah, we've seen legs and arms have sleeves or whatever. And even with those, I've even noticed like on their end, I've seen people say their slip for their arm or whatever. They hate the QR codes and big logos that they have to put on there. And I'm like, I understand why, because it's an FDA rule, but like I feel bad, but I also feel worse for my people because missing an eye, because they don't even have that freedom. You guys at least have the freedom to pick whatever design. I'm like, you have to like tiptoe. So I think, I wish that they could make a tiny little code. I wish they could. That's something that maybe they need to work on. But I think like allowing other people, like with the oculars, that freedom is like really important too.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I just want to wrap all of this up now, and I just want to thank you guys so much and just give you guys like the respect you deserve for being in an industry which is, again, probably very vacant. There's probably not a lot of people that A, know about it, and B, want to do it. So congratulations in finding your passion and finding a great mentor. And I just want to thank you both for coming on. I know this was a surprise, and I'm really happy about it. But thank you both. And I definitely want to have you guys on the podcast again for sure. And is there anything you want to leave the audience with that we haven't discussed yet? Or if there's anything that you think you'd like to mention? I'm going to include all your social medias in the descriptions and in the video and everything.
So that's where our ultimate goal, to connect everyone together in a physical location. So hopefully that's where we will be in a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, I want to thank you, women, amazing women, for coming out to the podcast. And thank you for enlightening me with information and the professionalism that you guys have, girls have. And I can't wait to talk to you girls again.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we'll be talking later. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Have
Bye.
fun. All right.
Have a
Bye.
good night. Bye now.